Okay, so 6-4. You guys have been doing what we call one-step equations. You did adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and now we're going to do 2 steps. So that means you're going to add, subtract, and then multiply and divide. Okay, you're going to do 2 things. So here's the first example. We have 2x plus 3 equals 9. And we want to solve for x. So you know in the order of operations we talked about how you do multiply, divide, then add, subtract? This is the opposite way because you're undoing the equation to solve for x. Okay? So now we're going to add or subtract and then multiply or divide. Question? Okay, don't give me the answer yet, okay? That's good that you know it. Okay, so if we're doing the opposite, everything's the opposite. We call these like inverse operations. That's the math word we use. So the opposite, and I said we do add or subtract first. The opposite would, the 3, because that's the add or subtract. What's the opposite of adding? Subtract. Okay, so the first step is to subtract the 3. Okay? So here's the first step. So we do the inverse operation, which is subtract. So we have a plus sign, so we know, okay, we have to subtract. Then we end up with the 2x, and that's going to equal 6 now. 9 minus 3 is 6, right? Now, you guys know how to solve for x at this point, I think, right? Divide by 2. Okay, so you divide by 2, and you should get x equals 3. So it's like we're doing order of operations, but we're doing them in reverse order. And then if we're adding, we're subtracting. If we're subtracting, then we're adding. You have to think like opposites now. Yes?
Can't you just look what 2 times length plus 3 is?
You can, but they're just going to get more difficult. So you have to understand the math behind it first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you think you should be done at this point? No, because if you want to get 100%, all you have to do is take that 3 and plug it back in. Okay, so you should always check your work, especially as it gets more challenging. So if I plug 3 back in for x, then I can say 2 times 3 is 6, right? Plus 3, and that does equal 9. Oh, I'll move it. There you go. Okay. So you should always check your answers. So like when I give you the homework, you should get 10 out of 10. Right? When you take the quiz next Tuesday, you should get all of them right because you can just plug these right back in. All right. Any questions? All right, let's try example 2. This has some negatives in it, and you guys are pretty good when you have plus signs, but whenever you have a minus sign, you kind of freak out a little, huh? So what do you guys think? This is negative 2y minus 7 equals 3. What do we do first? Add what? Add 7. Good, because we're working in opposite order of the order of operations. So we're going to add 7 because it's a minus. So first, we add 7 to both sides. That's step 1. I'm writing out the steps in detail for you right now, but when you guys get good, you don't have to write like step 1 and do all this stuff. It's going to be a lot faster. Okay? Better? Okay? So then you add 7 to both sides. What's happening when I add 7 to the left side? What's that making? 0, right? So I don't need to write the 0. Do you guys understand that? Okay. And now I have negative 2y equals 10. So what do I divide by? Negative 2. Don't forget the negatives. Okay.
Wait, what did it? 5 plus 2 times negative 2 equals. Oh.
Okay, so what's 10 divided by negative 2?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. Okay, and then we could check, right? We could plug this back in, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy. So if we check, we just say, okay, plug that back in where the y was. Negative 2 times negative 5 is a positive 10. Minus 7 is 3, right? And so then we have, where was I? Why did I put 7 equals 7? I might be a little sleepy today. Okay. 3 equals 3. There we go. Any questions on these two? It's pretty simple, right? You're going to either add or subtract first, and then you're either going to divide or multiply. In this case, we divided, right? Okay? But you know sometimes you're going to have to multiply. You guys ready for the next page? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One more example. So we have 4 plus the 1/5 r equals -1. 4 plus 1/5 r equals -1. So what do you guys think I should do first? Subtract what? 4. Good. And why do we subtract 4? Because it's like an imaginary plus sign there, right? So we're going to subtract 4. Did you guys do this in 6th grade?
No. Yeah.
Some people? Well, that makes me happy if you did. So we subtract 4. This is where people get messed up right here. This is the same thing as saying -1, right? Minus 4. So if you need to rewrite it, what is -1 minus 4? -5, good. So now we have 1/5 r equals -5. What do I do with the 1/5? Nope. No. Cross multiply. Remember we just did a bunch of these with the fraction? Really what you're doing is you're flipping it and multiplying by the reciprocal. But you can just cross multiply if there's a 1 right there. So now you get this, right? 5/1. You're flipping it and multiplying. And you should get what? Negative. Don't forget the negative. 25. So the first two we did add or subtract, then we did divide. This one we did subtract and then multiply. So you get the 2 steps that are going on here? Okay. Now we can check it. We can plug it back in. So we take the -25, plug it in for r. So this is 4 plus the 1/5 times the -25 equals -1. And then you can cross cancel here. So 5 into -25 is just -5, right? So 4 plus -5 equals -1. Okay? Which is the same thing as 4 minus 5. So that's -1. You guys think you could handle this? Yes. Okay, you try this one. Just raise your hand when you have it. Those of you that raised your hand so fast, did you check? Lie.
Yeah.
I don't think so. All right, Kendall, what'd you get?
X equals 3.
X equals 3. Raise your hand if you agree. Raise your hand if you disagree. Raise your hand if you don't know. She's right. So when you subtract 4, you get 6, right? Did you guys do that? And then, I have to write small. You have 2x equals 6, and then divide by 2, so you get 3. Okay? Raise your hand if you got it right. All right, try this one. 3x plus 5 equals 14. Okay, Alex P, what'd you get?
I got x equals 3.
Yeah. You're right. Raise your hand if you got x equals 3. So you subtract 5, right? And then you get 3x equals 9. And then divide by 3. Any questions so far? Okay, let's try this one. I think you're on a roll here. Well, it looks a little different. 5 equals 2 plus 3x. 5 equals 2 plus 3x. Some of you don't even have to write this down, huh? Okay, Brock? 1. What'd you do to get that? Okay, so you did minus 2 here. Okay. Equals 3x. And then divide by 3 to get 1. Okay. So it doesn't matter. Do you notice how like these two, they kind of like, they have the x on the left and then the number on the right? And this one I put the number on the left and the x on the right. Some people get kind of confused by that, but you just solve it the same way. Sarah?
Why do we subtract?
Well, we're trying to solve for x, which means we're trying to get x all by itself. So if we subtract here, we'll get a 0, right, on this side. If we added, then we would get a 4, and that wouldn't work. We want to get a 0 there, right? When you're trying to solve for x, it's called isolating the variable. Remember that from 6th grade? It'd say that isolating the variable. Okay, good question. Okay, one last one. I want you guys to try this one. It has fraction in it. It's just like example 3, so if you need to look back in your notes, that's fine. Well, maybe a little trickier. You can do it though. Just raise your hand when you have it. Okay, Rachel, you think you know?
Yeah.
What'd you get?
I got w equals 8.
You're right. Raise your hand if you also got 18. Raise your hand if you didn't get 18, you're not sure what you did wrong. Okay, this is pretty common. All right, so first we add 2, because that's the inverse operation, right? Did you guys do that first? Okay, so we add 2, and so that gives us this 2/3. I'm going to rewrite it right here. 2/3 w equals 12, right? And then to solve this fraction, we flip it and multiply. Remember this? Okay? So you could do 12 times 3 divided by 2, or could you cross cancel? Yeah? So 2 goes into 12 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Question?
How come you added 2 instead of subtracting 2?
Because it's a minus. We're doing the opposite, the inverse operation. Now, if I subtract 2, I'm going to get -4, and I'm trying to get 0. Remember? Like what Sarah said? We're trying to get 0 there. We're trying to isolate the variable, which means we need to get zeros wherever the variable are. Okay, so raise your hand if you got that right. 18? Okay. Alright, so what I want you guys to do in your book, the practice in your book, page 472, 1 through 4, and 473, 2 through 10, even.